So after 600 years of me being the good girl and the youngest and only daughter that never truly made waves, never really shook the table, never really stood up for herself in my family dynamic, I did something that most recovering people pleasers would never even think to do in a million freaking years. I made my parents a PowerPoint, and not just any PowerPoint, a PowerPoint airing my grievances, setting boundaries and saying no more of that for the first time ever. Yes, a literal PowerPoint. And it low-key changed the game for me. Alright, so let's snuggle in and get real comfy and talk about the roots of this situation. How did this really come to be? Dami, what were you thinking? How did you even get here? Sister, well, I'm gonna tell you, okay? So buckle up. Well, like I mentioned earlier, I am the youngest and only daughter, so I came up in a family with older brothers, okay? I am the baby. I am the sweet baby. Yes, I am the youngest daughter, but it always gave eldest daughter core, if you know what I mean. And I think that's mostly due to emotional parentification, mainly due to my gender. Just because I was a girl, everything was different for me. In my family, I always felt like it was all eyes on me. You know, I always had to be good, I had to be responsible, I had to take care of my business, I had to be emotionally mature, have emotional intelligence, make everybody proud. Okay, I had to be the mediator, I had to be the mini mom or the mini maid, if you will. I was the one that always fell in line. I never rebelled. And I felt like I can't make mistakes. You know, I had to be on my P's and Q's. I had to be the person that always, carried the load and always showed up anyway, even when it was hard, even when it was exhausting, even when I didn't want to be there, I had to show up anyway and put on a friendly face. Because I'm a granddaughter, a daughter, a sister, a aunt, and all of these things, I honestly felt like my brothers could just do whatever they wanted and they could just be themselves. Really, I feel like I wasn't even really checked on. I wasn't really seen as a person who had struggles of my own because they were focused on the boys being boys. And the boys didn't have to break their backs helping out at Thanksgiving. The boys ain't have their feet aching at the end of every Christmas because they helped set everything up. I was a victim of the conditioning that often falls on young women and families. And that's expected mental, emotional, and even physical labor at all costs, basically. Also, I will say that my personality and my issues with my self-worth likely made me easier to mold in that way, to mold under that conditioning. Because I didn't like to cause drama, I didn't like for my parents to be mad at me, I didn't like to feel rejected, not by my parents or really not by anybody. So I did what I had to do to basically keep the peace. And I listened whenever my parents told me to do something anyway, or, push through the pain, or whatever they used to tell me. And of course, this conditioning and thought process heavily spilled over into my adult life. And I'm sure a lot of self-proclaimed good girls or recovering people pleasers can relate. Now, let's talk about the build up to the PowerPoint, okay, because that's the real tea. Starting last year, I really entered a new chapter in my adult life. I entered a chapter of I want to be who I'm really meant to be. Okay, I was ready to shed all layers of my old skin, all layers of low self-worth, low self-esteem, not believing in myself, not having confidence, things like that. And I'm finally coming to an understanding of the kind of woman that I truly want to be and the kind of life I want to have. I have been learning so much about myself, and especially over the past few months, I have been learning about how my brain works and how my nervous system operates. And I found that I still have a lot of trauma stored in my body, even though I've done a lot of work on myself already. And I noticed I always tend to feel overstimulated, stressed, overworked, trying to manage myself and how my body works, trying to manage my goals, trying to manage the things I have to do on a day-to-day basis, and also managing things that my family and friends have a history of strapping me down with. So I decided that I needed to get into somatic therapy, first of all, okay? I need to heal my nervous system the long way. And I need to stop letting people shoulder undue responsibility and expectation onto me. I noticed that people aren't respecting me, my time, or my health because I'm not respecting those things for myself. And I had been practicing boundary setting and kind of speaking up for myself with my friends and other people in my life, but my biggest stressor was my family, essentially my parents. I mean, they were just pressing that button so hard, like, it got so frustrating, and the frustration just kept building and building and building until I got to a point where I said, I'm gonna lose it. Like, I was almost gonna get in my car and drive off, never to be seen again by anybody. I felt a crash out coming. But thankfully, my little cousin, who had been witnessing me all summer work through these emotions and navigate these difficult feelings, she told me it's time. Mind you, this is somebody who always speaks her mind to her parents, to anybody. She don't care. So she told me it's time. And I was like, it's time? It's time for what? But I knew it was time for me to speak up to my parents, speak my truth, and lay down the law. It was time to put some respect on the new Dami, not the old one. So I thought about some ways I could approach this. And I knew I was awful at just like talking from the top of my head. And I also have a stutter that gets really intense if it's like a high pressure environment or conversation. So I said, how can I approach this so I can really get out my points and say what I need to say and really drive it home? Because I wanted to frame what I had to say firmly without making them feel like they were getting attacked. So I asked myself, what form of communication am I best at? And I thought about it for a moment. I mulled it over and I was like, I'm really good at presenting information. Hence this YouTube channel. Like, what are we talking about? And then that's when it hit me. That's when the light bulb went off. I said, I should do a PowerPoint. And I knew that the PowerPoint would be a way for me to stay calm and stay organized and make sure my thoughts are there, make sure I have the facts, make sure I have the receipts all on display. And I thought it was also just like a genius and like a little bit cheeky move. You're being kind of a rebel. What? Okay, now what was in the PowerPoint? You may be wondering. Well, I basically talked about everything I've been feeling. I talked about what I've been learning about myself recently, what kind of weight I feel like I've been carrying in the family basically ever since childhood. I brought receipts on specific instances where I felt my parents were being unfair towards me or placing unfair expectations and pressure on me. Times where I felt like I wasn't being considered or respected. And I came up with a guideline on how I expect to be treated moving forward. I would say the PowerPoint was maybe about like 12 slides in total, but I packed that thing. I packed it with information. I also added in some like sarcasm and some like light joking and some meme photos, you know what I mean? Just to kind of like lighten the mood, you feel me? Because I didn't want the air in a room to be stupid thick. Because I'm naturally like a goofy person, I like to kind of offload tension with humor, so that felt pretty natural. But I still said what I had to say. I read everything off the slides. I didn't hold anything back. I didn't keep anything out. Not a stone was unturned. You hear me? I didn't sugarcoat. I was honest and I was real with love. Dom, what was their reaction? Let's talk about it. Okay, so when my parents first came in the room, because I was waiting on them with the PowerPoint already up on the screen, they came in and they were kind of like taken aback. So they were giggling. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, what's this? I'm like, just sit down. This is serious. I know it looked like it's funny, but I'm being for real. And so I started talking, okay? And it was times when I was talking where they would try to, interrupt and get defensive and say, no, that's not what happened. I said, hold on. I said, wait until I'm done with my presentation. Save all questions and comments and concerns until after the presentation. But they sat and listened until the end, and then at the end they were just kind of like silent. I guess like too stunned to speak. I guess processing everything I just said and trying to come up with how they were gonna respond or what type of question they would ask afterward. Now, some comments were a hit or miss. Some were defensive. Some were a little dismissive, but most of the commentary was wholesome. Most of the commentary was wholesome. Most of the commentary just wanted to understand. I feel like I was heard. At the end of the day, I was heard, and they let me know that they understand what I mean and where I'm coming from and what I'm talking about. My mom mentioned how they did tend to depend on me more because I'm just more reliable, but that doesn't make it right. She also said that most of the things I talked about in ways that I felt is the same exact way she's felt in her life. And to see me so clearly write those things out, possibly in ways that she didn't know how to, I felt that she was proud of me for that. And we also talked about how this moment is essentially me kind of breaking patterns that have been happening, you know, basically their whole lives too. Also, they both emphasize how just because they live their life a certain way and just because they cope with things a certain way, it doesn't mean that I have to. It doesn't mean that I have to follow in those footsteps. It doesn't mean we have to repeat those patterns with us moving forward. Now, did their reaction match my expectation? I don't really know like what I was expecting, because before I did it, I was so nervous. This is something I had never done before. I had never really spoken up for myself in a really honest way. And I was super nervous. I didn't know what they were gonna say or how they would take it. But I will say that how they responded was pretty relieving for me. I felt like they took in what I said and they gave me understanding. Even if they didn't agree with every single point I made or every single thing I said, they still acknowledge, Dominique, we hear you, and what you need, we're willing to work with that. So what's been happening after that? I feel like it strengthened the relationship I have with my parents. Now that I feel I can be honest with them, I feel that I can talk to them more. I feel like we've been having more conversations just off good vibes and not just based off of responsibility. The boundaries I set in particular, I feel like they've been trying to respect those boundaries. I know it takes time to get trained to new boundaries, like train yourself to new boundaries and also train other people to new boundaries, you know, get both parties used to the new way of doing things. I know that takes time, but I can see that they're trying, and that just means the world to me. After it all, I feel relief. I feel empowered. I feel strong. I feel like I can do more for me. I feel like I can make healthier choices for me now that I've set boundaries regarding the things that I just cannot take on. I have lightened my own load by just being honest, by just speaking up. So, what do we learn? What do we all learn from this video? I hate to be the one to say this, but recovering from good girl syndrome involves speaking up for yourself. It involves using your voice, because you can say all day in your mind, oh, I'm not going to perform for them anymore. I'm not going to act the way they want me to act. But the real change comes when you speak the hell up, when you use your voice, when you tell people to their face, you're not going for that no more. When you tell your parents exactly what they did that hurt your feeling. When you tell that friend, you're not going to do that thing for them that they always asking you to do. When you speak up and you use your voice, that's when you're using your voice to craft your reality. You need to craft your new reality out of good girl syndrome into bad bitch syndrome by using your voice. What I said in that TikTok was my ultimate realization. If you are trying to heal from being a good girl, okay, if you are trying to heal from people pleasing, you can say all day long, oh, I'm not doing that no more. Like, if they ask me to do that, I'm not doing that. But the change doesn't actually take place until you communicate with people, until you speak and use your voice. until you tell people what you're gonna be doing and what you're not gonna be doing anymore. Also, even if my parents didn't respond in the best way, it wouldn't have meant that I shouldn't have spoken up for myself. It just would have meant I need to learn how to deal with disappointment when people can't meet me where I am. Healing, true healing, isn't all sunshine and rainbows. It's about facing that thing that you don't want to face. It's about no longer running from the thing that makes you uncomfortable. It's about advocating for the best version of you, even when you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel yet. And if somebody told you it was easy or simple, they lied.
It was all a lie. Guys, it was all a lie. She lied. Dr. Bitch.
Them folks lied. It's hard and it's scary, but we must do the thing anyway. We must do it scared. We must make the hard choice. We must say the hard thing. Because even if it's rough right now, on the other side, you'll be free. So as it turns out, the best presentation I've ever done wasn't for school or for work. It was for myself and my own healing. Well, that's all I have for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments, of course. Have you ever had a moment of good girl setting the boundary? Or what would you put in a family PowerPoint if you made one? Please like, share, and subscribe. Okay, support your girl. I'm still trying to grow my channel. You feel me? As always, stay gorgeous, and I will see you in the next one.